live, obviously. Actually, a really special live. We're joining you from Clearwater Beach, Florida. Really special episode of the Metabolic Link. And we thought we'd bring you all the science and action that's happening here to the podcast because this is really like the Super Bowl of, of what we do, right? Of the field in terms of, you know, we've interviewed so many of the folks that are here, and now we get to see them in person presenting their important work. And so it's great to be here in real life in 3D with my co-organizers, Dr. Angela Poff and Dr. Dominic D'Agostino. Hey guys. How are you feeling, actually? Angela, why don't you go first?
Feeling good, very tired, a little, a lot of caffeine on board, but excited to be here. Really pumped about this weekend. It's been a year in the making. Lots of planning goes into, an event like this, and just so excited to see it all come together and see all these incredible people from our field in one place. It's really an amazing time of year.
Yeah, it certainly is. Dom, how are you feeling right now in this moment?
Amazing. I mean, this is like the synergy between basic science, clinical science, implementation. We got patients here telling their stories, and we've just coming together once a year, and it's been over a year, and it's been a long time overdue to bring everybody together. And there's no substitute for bringing people together in person. Although we have the virtual component, which is amazing, right? It's just amazing. The energy when you bring people together is what counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So we're here for Metabolic Health Summit 2024, and I just want to mention, if you don't have tickets yet, we have virtual tickets that you can purchase. And the great thing about it is you can watch live, and you can actually interact with the speakers. You can ask questions as the presentations are happening. You can engage with other attendees as well through like video chat. And there's all these amazing features, and we actually have a whole massive expo here with brands, really innovative brands that you can connect with as well. So if you're listening or watching this right now, you can actually purchase a virtual ticket and watch through February. So if you're not able to catch it during the live dates, you can actually watch it all the way through February, which is great. So make sure you head on over and get those tickets. But we're going to go through some of the science that's going to be here. It's action-packed. We really, to the brim, we've packed it full of the research that's happening in the field. We've got over, I think, 40 speakers that are coming out from all over the world, as well as poster presenters as well. So why don't we dive into the agenda? We've got the agenda here because we're gonna be kind of going through, who's coming out, what they're talking about, maybe dive into some of the weeds a little bit on some of the, the topics that we're going to be covering. Why don't we kick it off with this evening? We actually have our welcome session that's going to kick off with Dr. Walter Longo, which we're really excited to have him back because he actually spoke at one of our very first conferences ever. 2017. Yeah. So since then, he's been on Netflix and everything else and doing great work in terms of education, which is amazing. But he's really leading the charge when it comes to specifically research around fasting and fasting mimicking diets. So Dom, if you want to maybe dive into a little bit of the research that he's done, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So 6-7 years ago that he was our keynote in 2017, a lot has happened since then, and a lot has happened with Dr. Walter Longo before that time. I think it was the late 1990s and the early 2000s. Dr. Longo was doing the seminal research on caloric restriction, on nutrient sensing, and how our bodies adapt our metabolisms in regard to our energy input, caloric deficit, and all the genes that regulate that, more recently in the context of longevity. And he is really, I can't think of any other researcher that's really on the cutting edge of diet therapies, longevity, prevention. So his diet, the fasting mimicking diet, has gained a lot of publicity. We recorded a podcast with him a few months back, and we dive into the details, but his keynote talk tonight will really delve into the science of nutrient sensing, fasting mimicking diets, and the applications for prevention and for treatment. And I'm super excited to just see what he's been doing in the last 7 years.
Yeah, a lot. He's been very busy, I'm sure. Well, tonight, after the keynote speaker, we have our welcome reception, of course, where we've got a great book signing with some of your favorite speakers, including Dr. Walter Longo, which is really going to be great. We also kick off our expo in the evening. So it's kind of like a party to celebrate, science for the weekend. And then Friday, we have a full day. We've got several symposiums going on. We've got Metabolic Therapies for Neurological Disorders Symposium, Implementing Ketogenic Metabolic Therapy in Clinic. So for, the clinicians who are here that want to implement this into practice, we actually have the, sort of how to do that in the real world, which is so important, I think. It's important to have the science piece, the research, but also what does this look like in the real world? So we've got that. Metabolic Therapies for Cancer Symposium, Metabolic Psychiatry, which is a really exciting emerging piece of the field. Exercise physiology and metabolic health, and some great sessions hosted by our partner presenters. But why don't we start with neurological disorders? Because we're covering a wide variety of topics from Alzheimer's, the gut-brain axis, ketones to ketogenic metabolic therapy for adults with epilepsy, which is usually children that we focus on today, or not today. Tomorrow we're going to be focusing on this for adults, and also Dr. Christopher Palmer as well, who's going to be speaking to his brain energy theory. So why don't we dive into Kelly Faltersack's talk, Angela, and what she's going to be covering for ketogenic therapy for adults.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelly Faltersack is a registered dietitian at University of Wisconsin, and I had the opportunity to meet her in person about a year ago at the American Epilepsy Society meeting in Nashville, and she gave a really incredible talk there. And she was at that talk diving into unique considerations for women undergoing ketogenic diet treatment for epilepsy. And it was clear from her presentation that she is incredibly knowledgeable and a very experienced and compassionate dietitian. And she cares so much about spreading this information. And so it was not a hard decision to invite her to come out to Metabolic Health Summit to give this presentation. And as Victoria mentioned, she's going to be talking specifically on the use of ketogenic diet in adults with epilepsy. And this is really a hot area because ketogenic diet as a pediatric treatment for pediatric refractory epilepsy has been used for quite a long time. But in adults, it's kind of, I guess for a long time, it was kind of assumed maybe adults wouldn't want to or couldn't do it. And now there's some really incredible research and researchers, former speakers like Dr. Eric Kosoff, who's come out to MHS several times before, leading the charge in actually proving, clinically through these really incredible clinical trials that no, this is also effective for adults and it can be an option for them. So I think, for a long time it wasn't even presented as an option to adults, and now because of people like Dr. Kosoff, like Kelly Faltersack, it is, changing the way that we are able to actually offer treatment plans to patients, which is really incredible. And so Kelly is going to be speaking specifically about the use of ketogenic diet in adults, and she's actually doing another talk just a couple hours later, so we're really putting her to work tomorrow, alongside Franziska Spritzler, who is also a registered dietitian. Now, what's interesting in that talk is it's all about implementing ketogenic metabolic therapies, and Kelly's going to be talking more for neurological conditions, Franziska more for diabetes and metabolic conditions. And it's really cool to have two incredibly knowledgeable women in this space being able to have that conversation and understand and address the nuances and how, a treatment plan might be different for someone with a different specific condition, and it's a really important part of our field. So those are two really cool talks I'm looking forward to seeing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's really an action-packed day. We actually split the ballroom in half and have simultaneous sessions going on all at once. So we've got neurological disorders, cancer on one side, as well as metabolic psychiatry and exercise physiology on the other. So it's really kind of hard to choose where you want to go because we've got such amazing speakers on both sides. But
you can watch it on demand on the platform
there
just a couple hours later.
About to plug it. Yes, you can. You can watch it on the platform if you don't have a ticket. Get a virtual ticket, and then then even if you're an in-person attendee, you can, as Angela mentioned, watch it at a later date, all the way through February, which is pretty cool. So, but those virtual tickets are only available for a limited time, so I would not wait to get those. So in addition to that, we also have Dr. Christopher Palmer in the Neurological Disorders Symposium as well. He's going to be presenting on his new theory around brain energy, which is really exciting because he basically has a metabolic theory of mental illness. And this is somebody who's a Harvard psychiatrist, has just a wealth of experience within the mental health field, and he is leading the charge when it comes to speaking to things like nutrition and the power of nutrition and mental disorders, which is huge because if you think about just what is accessible to people right now, I mean, getting mental health care is so difficult for so many people that if we had something to where somebody could, walk to their fridge and understand that food can actually make a big impact on our mental well-being, and maybe they can make a difference, on their treatment or what have you. I mean, he's going to be speaking to cases where he's, people have gone into remission with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. I mean, things that you don't hear of, he's going to be speaking to. So it's a really fascinating theory. And when you actually dive into it, I think I remember you, Angela, you saying it makes so much sense. Why has nobody kind of thought of this before? There's all of these key pieces to it, metabolism being the biggest and mitochondrial health, but that's going to be a really, really fascinating and exciting talk. I'm really looking forward to because he's doing such great work. Why don't we dive into Metabolic Therapies for Cancer Symposium? Dom, why don't you speak to Tomas and his work at Boston College and what he's doing? And he's going to be kind of. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
You just
Absolutely,
like.
yeah.
I like it.
I
You
think
took the mic right off. It's great.
Better sound quality. Just quickly with Dr. Chris Palmer.
Yes.
His work, he's sort of advancing the science and the application of nutritional therapies for mental health. I mean, it's super important. And we have an appreciation at this conference that if you change your metabolic physiology, you are changing your brain energy profoundly. You're changing neurotransmitter systems, and you're having a profound impact on your overall health. So that's more recently this has emerged as an idea behind mental health, and although it's been a concept, in epilepsy for quite some time. So in the world of cancer, the same could be said, with cancer management and cancer prevention, that nutrition and our metabolic state in general and our metabolic biomarkers are intimately linked with cancer progression if we have cancer, but also keeping our body's metabolic health optimized is a strategy for preventing cancer to begin with. And Dr. Tomas Durack is a researcher in the lab of Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He's a colleague that's near and dear to our hearts because he was really the thought leader in advancing the science and now the application of cancer as a metabolic disease and metabolic-based therapies. So Tomas will be talking about ketone metabolic therapies, and I had the opportunity to see his talk at Keto Live a while back in the summer, and he is really spearheading a lot of great basic science research and actually putting together publications that can help clinicians and help practitioners implement this. And that has been so important to get the clinical world kind of behind this. And as a medical doctor, I think he's like a perfect person to do that, to kind of carry the torch and advance a theory that has a lot of credibility and validity behind it for cancer management and prevention.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to his presentation, we've also got Ezekiel Dantas, and he's going to be presenting on improving efficacy of, let me see here.
PI3 kinase
Yes.
inhibitors. Yeah. So Dr. Dantas, what I really love about this conference is that we have speakers who are from a broad spectrum of backgrounds. So PhDs, MDs, registered dietitians. So really getting, from kind of A to Z, this molecular information all the way up to human clinical trials and tips on how to implement this in your practice. So both Dr. Durock and Dr. Dantas are physician scientists, so MD PhDs, and they can offer a really unique perspective that is extremely valuable. And I think tomorrow's cancer session is going to be one of my favorites. I'm really excited about it. Dr. Dantas, his talk is titled Improving Efficacy of PI3 Kinase Inhibitors in Cancer. A few years ago, there was some really incredible data that came out of Dr. Lewis Cantley's lab at Cornell, which is where Dr. Dantas works as a postdoc now. And it was basically using ketogenic diet to restore sensitivity to a line of anti-cancer drugs that were PI3 kinase inhibitors. And it was incredible because it was great work. It was published in a really high impact medical journal. And it alerted the cancer world to, hey, the patient's background diet matters, and it matters a lot. It can actually restore sensitivity to a chemotherapy drug. And that is something I think has kind of been ignored for a long time, or there hasn't been hard science to really demonstrate that. And I think that was really kind of a turning point in the field for that reason. So Dr. Dantas is going to be talking about the molecular, mechanisms behind this and the data that they found in that paper. So it'll be a really cool presentation.
Absolutely. And just for those watching or listening, I just want to break in and say this is not even like halfway through Friday. I feel like we're just like halfway through Friday.
Early afternoon.
Right, early afternoon. And so if you want to jump in and get a virtual ticket, you can go to metabolichealthsummit.com. They're only going to be available for a limited time, but you will be able to watch whenever, really, through February, so in the comfort of your own home. But you won't want to miss this because we're just kind of slowly chipping away at this packed agenda. We've also got Chad Vanags, who's going to be speaking to the patient perspective. And Dom, you interviewed him actually for our podcast, The Metabolic Link, which if you haven't watched that episode, you can watch it right here on YouTube or listen to it via any of your major podcast players. Dom, maybe speak to briefly sort of the patient perspective. It's such a critical piece of MHS because you've got such great, scientists, you've got physicians, you've got dietitians, but then the patients are really furthering this field too by bringing this information to their physician and asking for metabolic-based therapy. So then that doctor then goes on and says, why don't I know about this? Or I need to look into this further. And then you have, a whole practice that's like, coming to Metabolic Health Summit and trying to implement this into the real world. But briefly touch on Chad's story.
Yeah, well, Chad was given a gut-wrenching diagnosis of cancer, and he's really used that, he's leveraged that to really redefine his life in a way that it's inspired him to become a better person if you talk to him, and to really advance this idea about being metabolically optimized, optimize mental health, optimize spiritual health. So he's sort of been really spearheading and giving a lot of talks in these domains, really about human optimization. And he has more recently really not, his story has changed a little bit, and it's not, he doesn't want it to be all about his cancer, but how he can, how he has leveraged a diagnosis to sort of reinvigorate his life towards spreading the message of human optimization with a key focus on metabolic health. And I'm super excited to, see the talk that he's going to give. And he's really an out-of-the-box thinker, and he's very inspirational just from a patient perspective and from the content that he's been delivering on. So follow him on social media. He's just an inspirational person in general, and he's got a really important story to tell.
Yeah, it's really important to us to include that piece of the puzzle into the mix with somebody who can speak from experience, and unfortunately having to implement some of these therapies, but doing so and then really just changing their lives, and then usually changing the lives of so many other people around them and inspiring everyone, and including us. So I'm really looking forward to that talk as well. We also have a metabolic psychiatry session, which that's going to be just fascinating because we've got a researcher, Dr. Ian Campbell, who is coming out actually from Scotland, and he's going to be discussing his pilot study on using the ketogenic diet for bipolar disorder. And Dr. Campbell is just a really incredible person. I mean, this is somebody who has struggled with bipolar disorder himself. We actually have an episode on this of the Metabolic Link on our YouTube or any of your podcast players, diving into using ketogenic therapy for bipolar disorder, but then his experience in just the dramatic shift in his life of going from something that was so debilitating to being able to regain control of, his life, and then not only regain control of his life, but go into research on using ketogenic metabolic therapy for bipolar. So furthering the field specifically within mental health, which is pretty incredible. He's going to be speaking. And then we've got Matt Bazuki, who's also going to be sharing sort of a patient perspective around bipolar illness and metabolic health, and how he's transformed his life and actually sent bipolar into remission as well, which is really wild and kind of sounds almost crazy when you say it out loud, but it's such an inspiring story. Both of them have inspiring stories and are doing such great work on the research and education front to really spread the message. And then, of course, Dr. Christopher Palmer is going to be joining them both on the panel that day to really dive into metabolic therapy for mental illness and bipolar, which will be a really fascinating discussion. I'm very much looking forward to. We also have exercise, physiology, and metabolic health with none other than Dr. Jeff Volek, which really looking forward to hearing more about the work that he's been doing. Angela, if you want to speak to him.
Yeah, sure. Excited to have Dr. Jeff Volek coming back. He's been a speaker a few times before. He does really incredible work. He's at the Ohio State University. Most people in this space probably know of Dr. Volek, or at least know of his work, and even if they aren't aware that it was him that did it. He's been in this field for a long time, and he's really done a couple decades worth of incredible work looking at how ketogenic diet influences metabolism and how that can be leveraged for improving metabolic health in terms of preventing or treating metabolic disorders, but also being used as a tool for athletes. And he even has some cancer research in his lab. I think at this presentation, he's planning to talk specifically on what happens in your body in a state of keto adaptation, which is really incredible. So in this space, if someone's uses a ketogenic diet, people talk a lot about how after a couple weeks, they start noticing many things feel different with their body. And he's actually been doing a lot of that work to start to uncover kind of what are the mechanisms at play? What are these molecular shifts, physiological shifts that are happening? And what we call keto adaptation, and how is that playing a role as both a preventative but also a treatment. So excited to have him out.
It'll be great. Really great talk. And following that, we actually have some really great sessions by our partner presenters diving into a lot of the science that they're doing. That's the really unique part about this field. We've got obviously the researchers and those folks in the trenches, but then we've got these brands that also understand how important the science is, that are funding some amazing work, and so they're going to be presenting here as well. We also have Friday evening our scientific poster session that kicks off with researchers from around the world. The really cool thing about this is that we're also going to have a virtual poster session on Saturday. So if you're not here with us in person and you want to get a virtual ticket, you can actually sort of participate in this poster session online and see everything from, I think the abstracts will be available. Also on our
Speak to the researchers.
And speak to the researchers.
Yep. Video chats with them, which will be cool. Yeah. So during the virtual session, poster session on Saturday night, all of the presenters will be on the virtual platform, and they'll be waiting inside their booths. And so you can pop in and have a conversation just like you would if you were here at the poster session live on Friday night. So that's a really cool feature of our virtual platform we're excited to add.
Yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity if you're joining us online or here in person too. So, and then of course we've got our VIP mixer, which every year we have all of our speakers attend. We've got all of the brands, that are leading the charge in the field as well that are going to be participating too. So it's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow night. On Saturday, we dive into metabolic therapies for metabolic disease. We dive into optimizing metabolic health. We've got a whole roundtable discussion on allulose, and we've got something I didn't mention, metabolic meetups throughout the weekend, where we've got like-minded people and professionals that you can meet with at designated times just to really make it happen and help people network. So if you're a physician, we've got physician meetups, you've got patient meetups, you name it. So why don't we quickly go into some of the work within metabolic therapies for metabolic disease. Let's speak to Andrew Kutnick's work. You guys are very familiar with him. Dom, do you want to share a little bit more?
Yeah, very familiar with Andrew, Dr. Kutnick. So He joined the lab, I'm losing track of time, maybe 2015,
what year it is
as
either.
a PhD student, a presidential, USF presidential fellow student. And his interest was multidimensional, I guess you would say. So he is a type 1 diabetic patient that has used dietary therapies to manage and optimize his glycemic control. But in our lab, he actually studied the anti-catabolic effects of ketones for preventing cancer cachexia and associated inflammation. So, and published a number of great papers on that, and did a fantastic PhD dissertation on this topic. And I am super excited to see Andrew again and to hear about what he's doing at Samsung University or Diabetes Center. And he's working with Sam Klein, who's the director there, and he is, from what I understand, sort of spearheading a number of projects on dietary therapies for diabetes, with a focus on type 1 diabetes, which is really a passion that's near and dear to his heart, obviously, from a personal perspective.
Yeah, this is going to be a really great talk. I'm really looking forward to it. And in our Optimizing Metabolic Health Symposium, we've got Dr. Ben Bickman. Do you want to speak to his work?
Yeah, Dr. Bickman is an incredible voice and leader in our field. He works at Brigham Young University, and he has a lab there where he really dives into the molecular mechanisms behind insulin resistance and how these can be targeted through nutrition or other means in order to improve metabolic health and prevent obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. He's a wealth of knowledge. Anytime you hear him talk, it's just incredible. You can listen, and he could talk for hours, it seems, and you can learn something new every time. So I'm assuming that Saturday will be no different. We'll get to hear some of his newest work. I think, let's see, the title of his talk is Fat, Why It Matters and What to Do About It. So it'll definitely be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have in that lineup Dave Feldman, who's going to be joining us, and Dr. Nick Norwitz, and they're really exploring a topic that I think is debated, is a super controversial a little bit, I would say, but they're doing such great work when it comes to HR, lean mass hyperresponders. So folks who see just this crazy spike in cholesterol, and really kind of leading the charge when it comes to research around that. That's not been done yet. That needs to be done, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers to entry in using a ketogenic diet is, what does it mean for my cholesterol or my heart health? So the two of them are really doing some incredible work, and I love Dr. Norwitz's talk title, Cookies and Cholesterol Controversy. It's going to be a really interesting session. Dom, if you have a few words about, I know you actually interviewed them for our podcast right here, the Metabolic Link, which you can watch.
Yeah. Citizen Science Foundation, I want to plug Dave's foundation. It's really delving into the science behind lean mass hyperresponders. The theory being that in the lipid energy model, that LDL plays a functional role, and a particularly important role. And so they're advancing this idea to really spearhead the science to understand if elevated LDL cholesterol is potentially atherogenic in this particular phenotype. And they have done, they're spearheading a lot of very sort of what will be seminal research on this topic, and also doing really a lot of education outreach in regards to social media and developing content to educate people on this topic, because it is a topic of vast and polarized confusion, I guess you could say. And there's a lot of buzz around it, and I think it's going to be super interesting. I think I'm super excited about their talks, and I'm also super excited to see where the science is going to go in regard to this topic, because it's sort of a very nascent area of research that really needs funding to clarify what this biomarker means in the context of this particular lean mass hyperresponder phenotype.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting panel discussion after that session too.
Yes,
I know,
for sure.
I know we're going to get a lot of good questions there. So, and if you're on our virtual platform, you can enter your questions in, and we'll actually share them with the speakers on the stage. We also are going to have a roundtable discussion on allulose that's got a lot of heavy hitters: Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Kutnick, Dr. Volek, Dr. Bickman, and really sort of dive into just allulose and this being a sugar alternative that's, I think, really changing the game when it comes to alternatives and really sweetening things without, the big blood sugar spike. In fact, you'll probably maybe get a blood sugar drop with allulose. So it's going to be a cool discussion. We've also got our gala dinner that night. That is just an unbelievable time. That's in support of the Charlie Foundation and Max Love Project. Really looking forward to kicking that off, where we're going to be providing our David Shevok Pioneer Award to Dr. Mary Newport and her important work, which is going to be great. And then Sunday is also action-packed. We don't, we kind of like go hard all weekend long, including Sunday. And actually, there's
We're
Dave
just
Feldman
talking
trying
about
to
you, Dave.
interrupt us as we speak. Hey, there we go. We just talked about you.
I did like
Where
the
were
shout
you?
across the room, and then I got reminded you're filming. But
Right.
I am so excited for this conference. It's
Yeah,
gonna be so good.
we're excited to
Excited to
have
have you
you.
here.
We've got a great lineup of speakers. This is I should have just said, wait until 2024 when you've got the best lineup ever.
Right, then, right, yeah. We were just waiting for the best year to do it, right? Yeah. Happy to have you. There we go. He's taking a selfie as we're on. Yeah, hey, cheese. So we're taking a selfie right now. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Selfie of us talking about you.
I love it. Yes, it was perfect timing. We planned that. Where was it? We've got a whole action-packed weekend. Sunday is no different. We've got some really cool up-and-coming, PhD candidates. And Angela, if you want to speak to Christy and Anna specifically.
Yeah, so our first two talks on Sunday morning are two young female scientists, which I love to support, Christy Storshuk and Anna Nicholas, and they are both PhD candidates. Christy's at Queen's University. Her talk is titled Of Mice and Men, a Muscle-Centric Review of the Fasting Response. And she's kind of given me a little insight into what she's going to be talking about. It's a really cool topic because she's going to be addressing a really important question in science, which is what do we know from studies in animals, and how does that actually relate to what happens in humans? Because it's not always the same, right? And so she is doing her PhD and has done some really cool work uncovering some of those nuances in terms of the molecular effects of fasting, specifically in muscle. So she'll be giving us some new data on that Sunday morning. And then Anna is at University of Bath. Her topic is can exogenous ketones help people age better? So talking about the role of ketones in aging. Both of these women are also incredible friends to Metabolic Health Summit and have been a part of our behind-the-scenes content creators, actually. So if you've read, social posts that we put out, a lot of educational content, both Christy and Anna have been writers for MHS, and they do a great job keeping up with the literature and keeping everyone up to date with their research synopsis. So.
Yeah, really looking forward to their talks. It's really cool to see kind of full circle, having them here as speakers. And Dom, maybe briefly touch on Dr. Tommy Wood. He's always just such a phenomenal presenter, but doing such important work as well. If you want to speak to, his talk is specific to, demand-driven decline, a systems-based model for dementia prevention. So that'll be a really fascinating talk.
Yeah, so Tommy, being an MD, PhD, he really has a pulse on brain health and the science behind optimizing brain health, and a diverse sort of background on sort of how to implement a wide variety of approaches in a toolbox that he can really articulate and really translate the science to human application when it comes to optimizing brain health in the average person, but also preventing strategies to prevent age-related dementia and also for treatment of Alzheimer's disease. So just super excited to hear what he's about to say. And we check out the Metabolic Link podcast that we did with him that kind of delves into this topic too.
Yeah, that was a really great podcast, and it's going to be a great session on Sunday, Metabolic Health for Human Optimization and Longevity. We're just touching on a few of the speakers here throughout the weekend. If you want to see all the speakers that are going to be here, go to metabolichealthsummit.com, click on speakers. You can see everybody who's going to be arriving. It's going to be a really just action-packed weekend full of science, full of networking, really. I don't know, I leave this conference feeling, even though we put it on, I feel totally inspired by the work really going on around the world, and I feel like it's this opportunity for everybody to come together, talk about it, discuss it, figure out how to collaborate and push it forward, even further. It's so important, I think, that we're here. And so really, really excited to be sitting here with you guys and about to launch Metabolic Health Summit 2024. Again, if you don't have tickets, you live in the Tampa area, you can join us in person, or
Come on down.
yep, come on down. We'd love to have you, and if not, get a virtual ticket, and we'll hope to see you there. And I just want to mention, if you're a medical professional, you can also earn CMEs doing this virtually as well. So don't miss out on the opportunity, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope to see you here at the conference or maybe online, and until next time, we'll be back on the Metabolic Link very, very soon. Thanks for
Thanks for
watching
following.
and listening.